I never imagined the worst day of my life would begin with a folded piece of paper instead of a body. When I arrived at the hospital after hearing that Flight 718 had crashed into the ocean, I was already 5 months pregnant. My legs were trembling so badly that my mother had to hold my arm as we walked through the endless white corridors. The doctors offered their condolences before anyone even asked my husband's name. They said there were no survivors. I felt as if someone had torn the air out of my lungs. A few minutes later, my husband's business partner, Daniel Carter, approached me with red eyes and a solemn face. He silently handed me an envelope. These were his final instructions, he whispered. My fingers shook as I unfolded the note. The handwriting belonged to my husband, Ryan. It contained only one sentence. End the pregnancy, rebuild your life, and don't let me hold you back. My vision blurred instantly. I couldn't understand how the man who had spent months talking to our unborn son every night could leave behind words like those. Tears rolled down my cheeks until they soaked the paper. My mother wrapped her arms around me, begging me to think about the baby growing inside me, but I could barely hear her. After everyone left me alone, I slowly slid down the cold wall outside the morgue and buried my face in my hands. That's when I heard a small voice. Mom, please stop crying. I froze. The hallway was empty. I looked around, convinced another family must be nearby. Mom, I'm talking to you. The voice was gentle, childish, and somehow familiar. My heart pounded so violently that I thought I might faint. Then I realized where it was coming from. My hands instinctively rested on my belly. Ryan isn't dead, the tiny voice continued calmly. He's lying. He planned everything. He's with another woman right now. I couldn't breathe. My lips parted, but no words came out. Who are you? I whispered. I'm your son, the voice answered. You named me Noah, remember? Dad wanted you to get rid of me because he didn't want me inheriting his money. He's spending his honeymoon with his first love overseas while everyone believes he died in the crash. Every hair on my body stood up. This couldn't be real, yet every word felt painfully believable. Listen carefully, Noah said. There's a hidden compartment under the 3rd floorboard in Dad's study. You'll find account books, 2 flash drives, and travel documents proving he never boarded that plane. There's also a bank account under his girlfriend's name where he secretly transferred millions before disappearing. My tears stopped. They were replaced by something colder. Anger. Her name is Emily Brooks, Noah continued. They've been together for months. Dad bought tickets to the Caribbean under her passport. He forged the passenger records so everyone would think he died. My hands clenched into fists. The note suddenly made sense. Ryan hadn't wanted to free me from grief. He wanted me to erase the only person who could legally claim part of his fortune. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. Daniel returned carrying paperwork from the hospital. He looked at me with rehearsed sympathy. Sophia, are you all right? Ryan wanted what was best for you. You should think seriously about what he asked. His eyes briefly drifted toward my stomach before meeting mine again. I lowered my head and pretended to wipe away fresh tears. I need time, I whispered weakly. He nodded with obvious relief before walking away. As soon as he disappeared, Noah spoke again. See? He's helping Dad. They planned this together. I stared down at my belly in disbelief. If everything you're saying is true, what do we do? There was a tiny pause before my unborn son answered with surprising confidence. We take back what's ours before Dad comes home. We don't steal anything. We simply protect what belongs to you and me. Those words echoed in my mind all the way home. The house felt strangely empty without Ryan's voice, but for the first time I noticed details I'd ignored for years. His study door was locked as always. He had never liked anyone touching his office. Following Noah's instructions, I stepped onto the wooden floor beside the bookshelf and counted 3 loose boards. My heartbeat quickened as I carefully lifted the third one. Beneath it was a narrow compartment containing several leather-bound ledgers, 2 encrypted USB drives, and an envelope with airline tickets issued under Emily Brooks' name. The departure date matched the very morning Ryan was supposedly killed. I felt sick. "There's more," Noah whispered. "Open the wall safe." I had completely forgotten there even was one. Hidden behind a framed landscape painting sat a steel safe with a keypad. "The code is Emily's birthday," Noah said. 092615. My fingers hesitated before entering the numbers. The lock clicked open immediately. Inside were stacks of cash, several bank statements, and dozens of photographs. Every picture showed Ryan smiling beside Emily on beaches, in restaurants, and walking hand in hand through places he'd claimed were business trips. At the bottom lay a handwritten note. "Just wait a little longer. Soon we'll never have to hide again." I recognized Ryan's handwriting instantly. The man I had mourned less than 3 hours earlier had been planning a new life with another woman while convincing me our family was everything he ever wanted. I gently closed the safe and leaned against the desk, struggling to steady my breathing. My husband hadn't died in a plane crash. The man I loved had simply buried me alive instead. The shock faded quickly because I couldn't afford to fall apart anymore. Every minute Ryan remained comfortably hidden somewhere overseas was another minute he could move money beyond my reach. I carefully returned every photograph and document exactly where I had found them, making sure nothing looked disturbed. Then I sat at his desk and switched on his computer. The fingerprint scanner recognized me immediately, but another 6-digit password appeared on the screen. "Emily's birthday again," Noah said. He wasn't very creative. I entered the numbers, and the desktop opened without hesitation. My stomach twisted. My husband had protected his entire secret life with another woman's birthday. "Check the deleted files," Noah instructed. The recycle bin looked empty, but he calmly guided me through restoring the hidden records. I followed every step exactly as he described. 10 minutes later, hundreds of deleted files reappeared. My hands became colder with every folder I opened until I finally found one labeled only with the letter E. Inside were months of conversations between Ryan and Emily. At first, I hoped there had to be some misunderstanding, but every message crushed another piece of the life I thought I had. Emily asked whether I suspected anything. Ryan replied that I trusted him too much to ever question his business trips. She worried about my pregnancy. He answered that he already had a solution. Once everyone believed he had died, I would be too heartbroken to keep the baby. If necessary, Daniel would convince me that honoring his final wish was the right thing to do. I kept scrolling. They laughed about how emotional I was. They joked about spending our anniversary on a tropical beach after the fake funeral. Ryan even wrote that I had never argued with him once in our marriage, so I would surely follow the note he had left behind. I closed my eyes. Every sentence felt like another knife twisting inside my chest. "Mom," Noah said softly, "don't waste tears on someone who never deserved them." I swallowed hard and nodded. "You're right." Before shutting down the computer, I copied every conversation onto one of the USB drives I had found in the hidden compartment. Then I photographed every bank statement, every airline ticket, every transfer receipt, and every page from the ledgers. I wanted proof that could never disappear again. "There's another bank card hidden behind the safe," Noah reminded me. After searching carefully, I discovered a narrow slot concealed behind the back panel. Inside rested a black debit card issued under Emily Brooks' name. "Dad moved more than $4 million through that account," Noah explained. He planned to live off it until everyone forgot about him. I slipped the card into my purse without saying a word. I wasn't taking revenge. I was preserving evidence. The following morning I visited the funeral home to collect Ryan's personal belongings. Television crews were already waiting outside because his company was well known throughout the city. Cameras followed me as employees rolled out a suitcase containing the few items supposedly recovered after the crash. A gray sweater I had bought him the previous winter lay neatly folded inside. I remembered how he had complained it was too expensive and insisted I return it. Instead, I had laughed and told him it looked handsome on him. He had accepted the gift but never once wore it. Now that same sweater had traveled farther than he ever had, pretending to belong to a dead man. Reporters surrounded me before I could leave. "Mrs. Hayes, would you like to share a message with your late husband?" one asked. For several seconds I couldn't speak. The tears that came were real because I wasn't mourning the man standing on some sunny beach. I was mourning the husband I believed had existed for 8 years. My mother wrapped her arms around me while photographers captured every second. That evening my face appeared across every major news broadcast beneath headlines about a devoted wife devastated by tragedy. When I finally returned home, I closed the front door, dropped the suitcase beside the entrance, and leaned against the wall. "Mom," Noah said gently, "you cried a lot today." I laughed bitterly through fresh tears. "I know. Were you crying because of Dad?" he asked. I looked at the expensive cashmere sweater lying inside the open suitcase. "Honestly?" I whispered. "I was crying because I spent $8,000 buying that sweater for someone who never deserved it." Noah actually sounded amused. "Good news. Soon you'll recover much more than the sweater." For the first time since receiving the phone call about the plane crash, the corner of my mouth lifted into a tiny smile. 2 days later Daniel visited my house carrying a folder from a private hospital. I deliberately answered the door wearing the same black dress I had slept in, my hair messy and my eyes swollen from sleepless nights. He studied me for a moment with what looked like genuine pity, though now I questioned every expression he made. "Sophia," he began carefully, "we're all grieving Ryan. But you know what he asked of you. The doctors are prepared whenever you're ready." He placed the folder on the coffee table. Inside were appointment forms for terminating my pregnancy. I lowered my eyes, letting my shoulders shake slightly as though I were barely holding myself together. "Could I have a little more time?" I asked in a trembling voice. Daniel hesitated before nodding. "Of course. I only want what's best for you." As soon as the front door closed behind him, Noah spoke again. "He doesn't care about you. He cares about making sure I never exist on paper." I stared at the hospital forms with disgust before sealing them inside an evidence envelope. Every document, every visit, every conversation would matter eventually. Ryan thought he had planned every detail perfectly. He believed I would remain the quiet, trusting wife who always accepted his decisions without question. He had no idea that the child he wanted erased was becoming my greatest ally. And for the first time since our marriage began, I wasn't following my husband's plan anymore. I was writing my own. Over the next several days, my life became a carefully rehearsed performance. During the day I played the role everyone expected, the devastated widow who barely remembered to eat, who cried whenever someone mentioned Ryan's name, who wandered through the house clutching old photographs as if grief had stolen every ounce of strength from her body. At night, however, the woman they believed was falling apart quietly rebuilt everything they had tried to take from her. Following Noah's guidance, I made appointment after appointment with lawyers, financial advisors, and banking representatives. I never revealed the truth about Ryan's fake death. Instead, I introduced myself exactly as the world knew me. "My husband recently passed away," I would say, my voice soft enough to sound convincing. "I need help understanding our marital assets." The first attorney I met was Michael Foster, one of the most respected family lawyers in the state. The moment he reviewed the documents I had collected, his expression changed. "Mrs. Hayes," he said carefully, "are you certain this is the complete list?" I glanced down at the notebook in my hands. "Probably not," I admitted. "My husband managed most of our finances." Michael nodded thoughtfully. Then we'll begin tracing everything through legal channels. Whatever belongs to the marriage should be protected immediately." Those words gave me more comfort than I expected. At home, Noah patiently dictated account numbers, investment portfolios, hidden deposits, and even passwords Ryan had reused across multiple banks. Every time I asked how he knew so much, he simply answered, "I remember things from before I was born." I stopped questioning it. Somehow, it no longer felt impossible. We compiled a list of everything Ryan owned or secretly controlled: luxury apartments, stock portfolios, offshore transfers, company shares, savings accounts, vehicles, private investments. The list grew longer every day until it filled several pages. "Don't bother claiming the sports car," Noah advised one evening. "It's financed. Let Dad keep paying for it." Despite everything, I laughed. "You're surprisingly practical." Someone has to be. By the end of the week, Michael had already begun filing emergency requests to freeze suspicious transfers and protect marital property before it disappeared overseas. Every document was filed legally. Every signature was witnessed. Every step was recorded. Ryan had spent months preparing his deception. We would defeat it with paperwork. On the 8th morning, the doorbell rang shortly after breakfast. Noah kicked gently before whispering, "Emily's family." I opened the door to find 3 strangers wearing carefully arranged expressions of sympathy. Emily's mother stepped forward carrying white lilies. "Sophia," she said warmly, taking my hands, "we were heartbroken when we heard about Ryan." Behind her stood Emily's father and older cousin, both avoiding direct eye contact. I invited them inside. The living room still looked exactly as I wanted it to: black curtains half closed, sympathy cards scattered across the table, Ryan's framed photograph beside untouched flowers. They settled onto the sofa while I quietly poured tea. Emily's mother sighed dramatically. Emily has been devastated too. She and Ryan were such close friends for years. I lowered my eyes. "I'm sure she must be hurting." Noah's tiny voice floated through my mind. "She's hurting because the frozen bank accounts ruined her vacation." I almost smiled but quickly hid it behind my teacup. Emily's cousin leaned forward. "Did Ryan leave any instructions regarding the baby?" There it was. The real reason for their visit. I gently rested one hand over my stomach. "He did," I answered softly. "I'm still trying to understand them." The 3 exchanged almost invisible glances. Emily's father cleared his throat. "Sometimes, after a tragedy, moving forward is healthier than holding on." Noah muttered, translation, "Please erase the inheritance." I kept my face perfectly calm. "Perhaps," I replied quietly. "I'm praying for guidance." The room relaxed. They believed I was still uncertain. Then Emily's father asked the question that revealed everything. "Have you already contacted Ryan's banks?" I blinked innocently. "Why would I?" "Just, business matters can become complicated after someone passes away." Emily's mother hurried to interrupt. "He only means that Ryan occasionally helped Emily with investments. We wouldn't want there to be misunderstandings." Investments. Such a polite word for secret payments to a mistress. I nodded slowly. "Actually, my attorney has been helping me review everything." The change in their faces lasted less than a second, but it was enough. Fear. Genuine fear. Emily's mother forced another smile. "Lawyers often make simple matters unnecessarily difficult." "Maybe," I answered, "but I don't know much about finance. I feel safer letting professionals handle it." 20 minutes later they left carrying the same flowers they had brought, claiming they had forgotten them. The moment the front door closed, I removed a tiny digital recorder from beneath the coffee table. Michael's assistant had installed it that morning. The entire conversation had been recorded legally. I immediately forwarded the file to his office. Less than 10 minutes later my phone rang. "Mrs. Hayes, Michael said calmly, that recording was extremely useful. They admitted a financial relationship between Ryan and Emily without realizing it. We'll include it with tomorrow's court filings. I thanked him before hanging up. Noah sounded pleased. Mom, today they practically testified against themselves. 2 days later Daniel returned, once again carrying hospital documents. This time I was ready. He placed the folder on the table before sitting across from me. Sophia, he began gently, the doctors asked me to remind you that delaying the procedure increases the risks. I looked directly into his eyes. Daniel, if my son is born, would he inherit Ryan's shares? For just 1 second he froze. It was barely noticeable, but I caught it. Then he forced a sympathetic smile. Inheritance shouldn't be your concern right now. Please answer me. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair. There would be legal complications. Ryan had business obligations. A child could complicate matters for everyone involved. Everyone. Not me. Not my son. Everyone else. Exactly as Noah had predicted. I lowered my gaze and let my voice tremble. So Ryan really believed ending the pregnancy was best? Daniel nodded slowly. He wanted you to have another chance at happiness. I quietly repeated his words back to him, encouraging him to elaborate. He did exactly that, carefully explaining once again how Ryan's final wish had been for me to terminate the pregnancy and begin a new life. Every sentence was captured by the recorder hidden inside the flower arrangement beside the sofa. After he finally left, I sealed the hospital forms together with the audio recording inside another evidence envelope. My hands were shaking, not from fear anymore, but from fury. Ryan hadn't simply abandoned us. He had built an entire network of people willing to erase his own child before he was even born. But while they believed I remained broken, every move they made only strengthened my case. They thought they were cornering a helpless widow. In reality, they were walking willingly into a trap that was almost ready to close. The memorial service was scheduled exactly 2 weeks after the so-called crash. By then every piece was in place. Michael had obtained emergency court orders protecting the marital estate. The banks had frozen suspicious transfers. Investigators had traced Ryan and Emily's movements overseas, and the company board had quietly received notice that serious legal concerns surrounded their late CEO's assets. Everyone believed they were gathering to honor a dead man. Only a handful of us knew the memorial would become something entirely different. On the morning of the event, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror wearing a simple black dress. My stomach was noticeably larger now, and I rested both hands over it. Ready? Noah asked. I smiled faintly. As ready as I'll ever be. Remember, he replied in his cheerful little voice, cry first, destroy them later. Despite everything, I laughed. You're far too clever for someone who hasn't even been born. I've had good teachers, he answered. The memorial hall was overflowing long before the ceremony began. White lilies surrounded a giant portrait of Ryan smiling confidently at the audience. Reporters crowded near the entrance while company executives whispered among themselves. Daniel stood beside the podium welcoming shareholders with carefully rehearsed sorrow. Emily's parents sat together near the front, their nervous glances darting around the room every few seconds. Michael sat quietly a short distance behind me, carrying nothing except a slim briefcase. When Daniel stepped onto the stage, silence filled the hall. He praised Ryan as a brilliant businessman, a devoted husband, and a man who had always put his family's happiness above his own. Every sentence sounded more absurd than the last. I kept my head lowered until he invited me to deliver a few words. Slowly I walked toward the podium, feeling hundreds of eyes following every step. My hands rested lightly on either side of the microphone. My husband left me one final message, I began quietly. The enormous screen behind me illuminated with a photograph of Ryan's handwritten note. End the pregnancy. Rebuild your life. A murmur swept across the audience. When I first read these words, I continued, I believed they came from a dying husband who wanted to spare his family more suffering. I was wrong. I nodded once toward Michael. Instantly the screen changed. Chat messages appeared one after another. Emily asking whether I suspected anything. Ryan promising I would never keep the baby. Discussions about forged travel records, secret vacations, and fake deaths. Gasps echoed throughout the hall. Daniel jumped to his feet. Sophia, stop this, he shouted. You're grieving. You're confused. Michael calmly stood beside his chair. Please remain seated, Mr. Carter. Nobody moved. More evidence filled the screen. Airline reservations under Emily's name. Hidden bank transfers. Hotel surveillance photographs showing Ryan and Emily entering a luxury resort only days after the supposed plane crash. The room erupted into stunned whispers. Emily's mother covered her face. Her father stared at the floor without speaking. I looked directly at Daniel. You visited my home more than once, I said. You brought hospital paperwork and repeatedly encouraged me to carry out Ryan's final request. Would you like everyone here to hear exactly what you told me? Before he could answer, Michael played the recording. Daniel's own voice echoed through the speakers, gently insisting that terminating my pregnancy was the right decision and repeating Ryan's final wishes almost word for word. The color drained completely from his face. A board member rose immediately. Effective immediately, Daniel Carter is suspended pending investigation. Security officers quietly stepped toward him. Then Michael's phone vibrated. He glanced at the screen before looking at me. I nodded once. A live airport security camera appeared on the giant display. There was Ryan. Very much alive. Wearing sunglasses and trying unsuccessfully to avoid several officers approaching him. Emily stood beside him crying while airport security blocked their path. Reporters inside the memorial hall surged forward as cameras flashed non-stop. Someone shouted, "He's alive!" The room dissolved into complete chaos. At that exact moment Michael's phone rang again. The caller ID displayed Ryan Hayes. He activated the speaker. Ryan's frantic voice filled the silent hall. Sophia, listen to me. None of this was supposed to happen. I can explain everything. I stared at his smiling portrait hanging above the stage. Explain what? I asked calmly. The fake death? The affair? Or asking me to erase our son? He stumbled over his words. In the background Emily could be heard screaming that he had promised the money would remain untouched. Daniel shouted that none of it had been his idea. One by one they abandoned each other, desperately trying to avoid responsibility. I allowed the silence to linger before speaking one final time. Ryan, you didn't die in that plane crash. But the husband I believed in did. Without another word I ended the call. The hall remained completely still. By sunset Ryan had been taken into custody after questioning at the airport. Emily was detained as part of the fraud investigation. Daniel left company headquarters carrying a single cardboard box under the watchful eyes of security. Every major newspaper led with the same unbelievable story. Billionaire executive exposed after faking own death. Pregnant wife uncovers conspiracy. Fake final message used to pressure unborn child's inheritance. I ignored the headlines. Michael kept me informed about what truly mattered. Ryan's authority within the company was suspended. Fraud investigations expanded. Hidden assets were traced. Transfers through Emily's accounts were reversed. The criminal case grew larger every week. Several days later Ryan requested a private meeting. Against everyone's advice, I agreed. The man who entered the meeting room looked nothing like the confident executive I had married. His expensive suits were gone. Dark circles surrounded tired eyes. The moment he noticed my pregnancy, tears formed. Sophia, please. I made terrible mistakes. I remained standing. You tried to erase our child before he even had the chance to be born. He lowered his head. I want to be his father. Noah kicked gently beneath my hand as though answering for himself. Application denied, he whispered. I almost smiled. Ryan reached across the table. I still love you. I looked at him quietly. I cried at your funeral because I believed my husband had died. Then I discovered he had never existed. His shoulders collapsed. I'll give everything back. You're not returning a gift, I replied softly. You're surrendering what never belonged to you alone. I walked toward the door. From today forward, every conversation goes through my attorney. Sophia. He called after me. I paused without turning around. We were a family. My hand rested protectively on my belly. A family doesn't ask a mother to destroy her own child. That was the last conversation we ever had. Months later I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. The mysterious voice that had guided me throughout my pregnancy disappeared the instant I finally held Noah in my arms. For a brief moment I almost missed it. Then his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and I understood. He no longer needed to speak from inside me because he was finally where he belonged. Ryan's requests for custody and visitation were denied while the criminal proceedings continued. The courts protected Noah's inheritance and future exactly as the law intended. A year later Ryan's name had vanished from the company he once believed he controlled forever. Emily lost every fortune he had promised her. Daniel disappeared from the business world entirely. As for me, I moved into a quiet home filled with sunlight, laughter, and toys scattered across the living room instead of lies hidden beneath the floorboards. Sometimes, when Noah falls asleep in my arms, I remember the calm little voice that first spoke to me in that lonely hospital hallway. I never hear it anymore, yet I don't need to. Before he was even born, my son saved my life. And the man who ordered me to erase him ended up erasing only himself from our future forever.